going to discuss project planning. We're going to discuss project planning. We've been discussing this stuff in your ICT application in construction as well for the subject of MS project, for the section of MS project. Project planning, this is pretty much the construction projects that you're dealing with at the moment. It's not that these cannot be applied to other project planning, project management applications, but here specifically what we do is discussing the construction project management application. So let's assume that you are going to plan a construction project. You're going to plan a construction project. There are several stages that we plan the project. Right? You know the process of project planning. First, the consultant starts something. He prepares a tender. In preparation of the tender, he should have a plan for the project. That's pre-tender plan. It's pre-tender plan. This is before the tender. Thereafter, after awarding the plan, after awarding the tender, the contractor has to prepare a plan for his project. That's pre-contract, before the contract, in fact. Before the contract, this is not the contractor. Here, the contractor has to plan. This is before the tender, this is after the tender, before the contract, here, during the contract. There are three different stages that we have to plan at least. At least we have to have these three plans. Then there's a long-term plan. If you have a site, if you have a consultant, if you have worked in a consultant office, there are project plans that you have seen with this MS project in your big boards. That's a long-term plan. The entire project is explained in a nutshell there. Long-term plans are there. Then short-term plans, monthly plan within the, by the end of this month we should finish this. By the end of this week we should finish this. Like that, there should be plans like that as well. These are the stages that you can plan a project. These are the levels that you're planning. Before the tender, before the contract, during the contract. This is the stages of planning. At least we have to have those plans. If there are updates during the plan, we can make it like that. And there should be a long-term plan and there should be a short-term plan as well. This is something like a project plan. You have done this in last semester. It would have been ideal if that can be done after this, but anyway, it's what is given to us in the curriculum. So you understand these. Now these are the activities. This we call Gantt chart view. Right? These are activities. These arrows are relationships. Right? If you can remember, we have discussed 4 relationships: finish to start, start to start, start to finish, finish to finish. Those are the 4 types of relationships that we discussed last time during the MS project. If you don't remember, we need them here today, working these out. Okay, so finish to start means, and there are 2 other things: predecessor and successor. Successor. Yeah. Predecessor means the activity before, like the wall construction has to be done after foundation. So foundation is a predecessor of wall construction. That's it. Foundation, wall construction, 2 activities. So this we call the successor. successor of foundation. We call this to be the predecessor of wall construction. So we have to have an understanding of these two words as well. So finish to start means you have to finish the predecessor to start the successor. Start to start means you have to start the successor to start the, you have to at least start the predecessor to start the successor. Predecessor means the activity before, the successor means the activity after. Start to start is you can start together and there are leads and lags. We have discussed all this last semester. Lead means how many days before. Let's say finish to start with the lead of 2 days means the successor can start 2 days before the predecessor finishes. Lag means the successor can start 2 days after the predecessor finishes, like that. Okay? So we have to have an understanding of these words. I'm not going into detail, I'm rushing this because we have discussed this last time in the last semester, but this is just a quick recap. Okay, so we have to understand this activity, relationships, the types of relationships, and what is predecessor, what is successor, what is lead, what is lag. So if you have an issue on that, you can use the chat to ask me. Right? And project planning can be done, not can be done, has to be done in these 4 stages. Let's say we have a project, we need a time plan. This is time planning that we are discussing here. So we'll forget the resources and cost for the time being. We'll discuss the time plan. Let's say you are going to construct a house with a proper project plan. You're going to construct a house with a proper project plan. These are the stages that we need to follow. First, we need to identify the activities. What are the activities? For example, for a house, we have foundation, walls. This is a very crude thing that I'm doing. There are different activities in foundation. You have excavation, you have rubble work, everything. But at a macro level, these are the activities that we have. Roof, service, let's say. Right? And in foundation, you have excavation, and you have maybe rubble work, maybe you have backfilling. There are different activities like that. We have discussed last time as well. These should be activities that we can budget. Excavation, depending on the quantity that we have, what is the amount of labor that we need, what is the number of laborers that we need, and what is the time that it takes. We should be able to find that. Rubble work, material cost, labor cost, sorry. We should be having an idea. So these are activities. Activities are the things that can be costed. These are called summary activities. We have discussed this last time. So we have to identify activities. This is what we call activity definition. So we have defined the activities. For walls, what are the activities? Roofs, what are the activities? Services, what are the activities? We have to have an understanding. That's this. We have to define the activity. We have to understand what need to be done to do this project. So we have defined the activities, let's say. Then we have to sequence the activities at the second stage. We're going to discuss this today in examples, you will understand better. So Since we have activities, so rubble work has to be done after excavation. So we have to have an understanding of relationships here. What has to be done after what? Now we can't build a roof without the foundation, without the walls, without the superstructure. So sequencing is what activity has to be done after what, that has to be known. The order of activities. Sequencing or ordering. Preparing an order. We can't do all the activities together. Some activities have to be finished in order to do other activities. Right? However, whatever the amount that we have, we can't construct a house in one day. Right? Typical house, brick house. Because we have to have a sequence. Right? Then the third step is durations. The duration of each of these activities. So for excavation, with the amount of labor that we have, how long will it take us to do this excavation? How long will it do? This is the time plan that we're discussing. No? How long will it take for doing the rubble work? Backfilling. How long for each of these activities? That has to be known. That's our third step. Finally, the fourth step is we know the activities. We know the order that the activities are going to be constructed, and we know the duration of each activity. Then we can determine the schedule. So these are the activities. This is the order of activities. This activity takes this long. Then developing the schedule. These are the steps that we have to follow in planning a project, creating a schedule. That is. Hope you get that. So we will go into detail. There are 4 steps. Remember, this is the first step. This is the first step. So we understand the activities. Foundation, wall, roof, plumbing, doors and windows, wiring, finishes. Those are the activities that you have identified. The same stuff that you have told earlier. And we have to prepare it in a structure like this. We have to prepare it in a structure like this. Right? If you remember, we call this work breakdown structure. Or in short, we call this WBS. We call this WBS. So, as I told you earlier, these are summary activities. These are all summary activities. These are activities. Sorry. These are activities with these red boxes. Those are activities. Or we call them work packages. Remember, these are the stuff that we can have a cost. For foundation, we might not have an understanding of the cost. For wall construction, we might not have an understanding of the cost. But site clearing, we should have an understanding. Excavation, we should have an understanding. Rubble work, we should have not understanding, we have to have an idea of the cost that it takes. Those are small activities that everybody understands. Site clearing, excavation, those are small activities. So those are activities where we can cost. So whatever the things that are there in these red boxes, those are activities. So we have defined the activities. We have prepared that in a structure, we call it work breakdown structure. That's easier for us to manage a project like that. So activity definition has to be done. That you have to understand. Then activity sequencing. This has to be done. Here this is a finish to start with a lag of some amount of day. This is a finish to start link. It's what you call sequencing. It's what you call sequencing. We have the activities. What activity can be done after which of those activities, that we have to have an understanding. That's what you call sequencing. Basically, understanding the order of activities. So the third step, understand the resources. Here 500% is 5 laborers. We have done this in MS project. 5.7 bags of cement, 1.5 cubes of rubber, 1.5 cubes of rubber. So here in the time plan, what we are interested in is labor, unskilled labor. So we understand the durations, and this the important thing is this, these values. How long will it take to finish each of these activities? If you remember, we don't modify these summary activities. We don't modify them. Roof slab is a combination of these 4 activities. So we understand these 4 values. This should be automatically calculated with leads and lags and everything. Since we have discussed this already, I'm not going into detail. Right? So provided that we have all those things, the activities and the order of activities and the duration that each of these activities take. Let's say we have all those things. Let's say we have all those things. Then we should be able to develop the schedule. We should be able to tell the client, okay, your project will take this long. Right? For that, there are several techniques that you have to adapt. That is what you're going to discuss today. One of those techniques is what you're going to discuss today. So we call it critical path analysis or network diagram or critical path method. We're going to discuss that. Remember the data that we need. In a practical context, we need the activities that we need to do, the order of activities, and duration of each of these activities. Sorry. The data that we need to do this technique. Activities, sequencing for order of activities. Third one is activity durations. In a sum like this, you will be given those 3 details, 3 data. You have to be given those 3 data, provided that you have these 3 data, develop in the schedule is what you're going to discuss. So in a practical context, you should define the activities, you should sequence the activities, you should estimate the duration of activities. That comes with a bit of experience. What you're going to do here is, if you are given these 3, how to develop the schedule. There are several techniques we'll be discussing during the first few weeks of those techniques. We will discuss those techniques. Here we are going to discuss one of those techniques today. We call it activity on arrow networks or activity on arrow diagrams. That is a technique that we are going to discuss. Remember the data that we need. Set over. Here we call it critical path. It's one technique in critical path method. Critical path, what it is, we have discussed. Critical path. Okay, in a while we will discuss again. So we have to identify the critical activities. Practically, the activities that has an effect on almost all the other activities. Let's say a two-story building, a floor slab. Without the floor slab, we can't do anything on the upper floor in a typical construction case. So that's a critical activity. So we should be able to, now the slab is delayed means the entire project is going to be delayed. So we have to identify the critical activities like that. So how to determine critical and what are critical activities in a context of project, that we will discuss with the technique. And we develop a network. There are two techniques that we use to develop a network. We are going to discuss this today. Activity on error. Remember, this techniques have a lot of what we call drawbacks. Right? The practicality of this system is less. Normally, when I'm teaching B2 students, I'm not using them to teach this, but for you to understand the concept, I'm going to do this. I'm teaching this after a long time, so you see. Right. This is simpler, but there are limitations. This is a little difficult, but this is a powerful technique. Activity or no. Right? So we're going to discuss this activity on arrow today. Right? So you can go through this. The advantages are, since we have since we have a technique, we can have the coordination because we know what activity is done when, and we understand the duty of each. Okay, you need these activities to be done on that particular date. So you can coordinate with the supplies, you can coordinate with the people, you can coordinate with the stakeholders, everything. So if there's a trouble, we can identify in advance. Right? You can go through this. There are many advantages in having a plan. This is pretty much advantages of having a plan. Right? So you can go through these later. The slides are with you. I'm not going into detail. So the arrangement of a diagram, activity on arrow diagram is something like this. Right? So we will have to discuss. There's a calculation. Calculation in the sense you have to be good in addition and subtraction. Right? So we're going to do addition and subtraction. This is the arrangement of the thing. We will work out this particular sum itself later. Before that, we will go to the basic concepts of this activity on arrow networks. Activity on, for those who have missed the class up to now, this is the place where we are going to start the real theory. Okay, so these are the basic concepts that we are going to discuss. Right? Now you understand what the activities are. You know what the activities are. Excavation is an activity. Rubble work is an activity. Backfilling is an activity. Those are activities. Activity is represented by an arrow. So we are going to develop the schedule. Basically, we should be able to tell the project duration after this. We know the individual activity duration. We should be able to tell the project duration with this technique. So activities are represented by arrows in this technique. Right? Each of these arrows contain two circles at the beginning and at the end. We call this ij arbitrary. Right? You can use any symbol. We call this tail event and we call this head event. That means this is the start, this is the finish. Let's say excavation. This event is the start of excavation. This event is the finish of excavation. And this is the duration of excavation. This is the activity of excavation. And we write the duration below that. Let's say this is 4 days. Right? I'll tell that again. Activity, finish of activity, start of activity. We call this tail, we call this head. And we write the activity here. Write the duration here. Each of these activities, each of the activities that you have defined and identified have to be represented in an arrow like this. In an arrow like this. Right? Then it's the same thing. This is the tail event. This is the head event. Right? So this is an example. It's an example. Right? And we give the event a number or maybe AB or something. Right? So this A activity can be given as 10-20 activity. 10 to 20. 10 is the start of A, 20 is the start of, finish of A. Right? 10-20 activity, that's activity A, the duration is 5. This is also activity. This is also activity. It's the same way. 10-20 activity and A activity, basically they are the same thing. Here in this case, this 10 can be this 10 can be 1 or 2, or maybe A or B. Typically we give numbers. Why? Why we give numbers? That we will have an understanding later. Right? Once after doing that. So this is a basic activity. This is a basic activity. Let's say this is excavation and activity B is foundation. We can have an arrow like this, something like K, B. Right? So activity B has to be done after activity A. So there's a finish to start link here that you have to understand. It's a network. It's a network that you're going to discuss as I've shown you earlier in a previous slide. Okay, in the previous slide. So these are dependent activities. This activity B is depending on activity A. We have to finish this activity to start this activity. Right? So these are independent activities. There's no relationship between 10-20 activity or activity A and activity B. There's no relationship. There can be activities like that as well. Those are independent activities. Right? That you can. These are dependent activities. Activity B depends on activity A. because there's a link here. Construction of foundation and walls, that's one example. And we can't have activities like this. You have to finish this to start this, and you have to finish that to start this. That doesn't really make sense. So if you in your network, if you have something like this, that means what you have done is wrong. And we can't have activities like this as well. In a network diagram, it should be a network, there should be a connection. If it is like this, that is fine. Right? That you will understand later. Dummy activities we will discuss later with an example. Right? So, this we have discussed. These are the steps that we need to follow. I'm repeating this because this is very important to understand this. Identification of activities, that is done. Relationships, that is also has to be done. Logic network, that we are going to discuss now. Right? And in an activity, let's say this is an activity on arrow. You might not understand this at the moment. It may be a little harder for you to grasp this at the moment. I'm going with the theories first, and we will work out an example, then you will understand it better. Right? But this understanding has to be there when you are going for an example. Right? Okay. So we have an activity A. This is the start of activity A. This is the finish of activity A. Let's say this is arbitrary. And above those events, we draw a thing like this. In calculation, we have to have 4 values here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are some characteristics of these activities. Let's say for this example, activity A, there are these 4 values that we need to find out. What are those 4? This one is earliest event time. Earliest event time, they are all here, earliest event time. Right? This is the latest event time. That is, let's say this is the start of activity A, this is the finish of activity A. Let's say end of activity A. This is the earliest time that the activity can be started. This is the latest possible time that the activity can be started. Right? If you take an activity, if you have issues, if I'm too fast, just let me know. You may feel that this is too fast at the moment because we haven't worked out any examples. So this is, let's say, A, earliest start time of A. This is the earliest finish time of A. Sorry. This is the latest start time. This is the start time. Latest start time. Latest start time. Latest. This is the earliest finish time. This is the latest finish. So for each of these activities, we should be able to tell those 4 values. So what is the meaning of this? Earliest start time is, as the word itself implies, earliest start time is the earliest possible time that the activity can be started. That means, let's say wall construction and foundation itself. Wall construction and foundation itself. Wall construction, there's an earliest possible time that this can be started, provided that the project duration is kept the same. We find a project duration. Let's say the project duration, a house is 50 days. Project duration is 50 days, let's say. So if it is 50 days, we can play with some activities within those 50 days. Right? Let's say tiling, for example. Right? There's an earliest possible date that it can be started, or it may be able to be finished by the end of the project. So we can back calculate and find out the latest possible time that this activity can be started. Right? Tiling, we can finish it early and do other stuff, or we can finish it at the last moment. It doesn't matter, it doesn't really affect the duration of the project. You will understand that once you do an example. So we should be able to find these activities: earliest start time, latest start time, earliest finish time, latest finish time. Right? So we'll work out an example now. We'll work out an example, you'll understand that better. Before that, you have to understand the sum first. I will give you some time. Just go through this sum and try to understand what it says. So this is a simplest possible sum that you could get. Right? If you can, if you have an issue, you can use the shell. So I'm taking this example. Right. So tail event is 1, head event is 10, the activity is A, duration is 1. So I have drawn this. If you have an issue on this, please let me know, because from this point onwards, if you don't understand what I have drawn now, you will not be able to follow this. Right? Can you draw in a pen and a piece of, take a pen and a piece of paper, in your piece of paper, can you draw this, the network? Right? Can you draw with these available data that is given to you? Can you draw the network? So I'll give you some time. Take a pen and a piece of paper and draw this network, please. You can draw this network. You can see my screen, right? Yeah. Good. Okay. Now, this is the example. 1 to 10. We have 1. You can see my screen. We have 10. A, duration is 1. You all have done this. I'm going to do this without discussion. 10 to 20. B, duration is 5. 10 to 30. C, duration is 2. 20 to 30. D, duration is 4. 20 to 40. E, duration is 6. 30 to 40. F, duration is 3. 40 to 50. Yeah, 40 to 50. G, duration is 7. So this is a network. This is what I have asked you to draw. Right? So this is what we call the network activity on arrow diagram for this project. Huh? It is in example 1. Right. Now I have told you we need to find the event types. So we have to draw something like this on top of each of these events. We don't have a space, so I'm drawing it below that. Right. So I'm going to discuss the way of solving this now. I'm going to discuss the way of solving this now. We are starting with duration 0. That's at the start of the project. A has to start at the start of the project because otherwise the project is not starting. That A is the first activity that we need to do. Right? That is, now the numbers here means by the end of that day. This is the end of 0th day. That is the start of first day. Right? Start of first day, you're going to start activity A. Right? Remember, these are, so there are two things, forward pass and backward pass. I'm going to solve this, find out the duration of the project and find out the earlier start, later start times of these activities. Forward pass finds the earlier start times. You will understand this. Earlier start times and earliest finish times. Backward pass, latest start times and latest finish times. Okay. Now we are going with the forward pass. Now we are going with the forward pass. This A activity A starts at the day 0 and the duration is 1. So the earliest possible time that activity A can finish is 1. So here you can have 1. Give a minute. Okay. Now, earliest start time of activity A is 0. Earliest finish time of activity A is 1. Right? Now, activity B, the duration is 5. The earliest possible time that activity B can be started is 1. Right? Earliest possible time that this activity can start is 1. The duration is 5. 1 plus 5 here becomes 6. So the earliest possible time that activity B can finish is 6. Pretty much 1 plus 5 is 6. Same way, 1 plus 2 is 3. Right? 1 plus 2 is 3. Let us select another color. Otherwise, okay. Ideally, this should be the case. But there's an issue here. There's another arrow like this. So here it becomes 6 plus 4 is 10. Okay. for this event 30, there are two parts. Right? 1 plus 2 is 3. This 6 plus 4 is 10. 3 and 10. 3 and 10. So what happens here? Typically, we take the higher value of those two because both these activities have to finish to start this activity. So we take the higher value. When you do several examples, you will understand. When you do several examples, you will understand. So this becomes 10. There are two values here, 3 and 10. We take the higher value, the forward. Because both those activities have to finish to start this. At day 3, we can't start this because this activity is not finished. Right? Then, here, once again, we have two parts. 6 plus 6, we have 12. 10 plus 3, you have 13. This is the earliest possible time that this can start. This duration is 3, so it can be 13. Here 6 plus 6 can be 12. So we take the higher value 13. I know it's a little hard when you do it for the first time, but you can try to understand. I'll give you time to understand. 13 plus 7, here 20. 13 is the earliest possible time that this can start. Earliest possible time. The duration is 7. 13th day. By the end of 13th day, you can start. The duration is 7. It can be ended by the 20th day. Right? Since the value here is 20, check whether I'm correct or not. The duration of the project (20 days or 20 weeks or whatever). For the timing will take 20 days. So that is the duration of this project. With these activities, these durations, and these relationships. Right? 20 here. Same way that you have started with 0 earlier. Right? Now we are deducting the duration. 20 minus 7 is 13 here. For this activity G, earliest start and latest start are the same. Earliest finish and latest finish are the same. Though this activity cannot be delayed. It cannot be started earlier, it cannot be started later. It has to be. For the project to finish on day 20, the activity has to start at 30 and has to finish at 20. There's no play. Earliest, those are critical. Those are critical. Right? So we will calculate backwards. 13 minus 3 is 10. Once again, another critical activity. F is also a critical activity. Right? Here, this particular place, 13 minus 6 is 7. 10 minus 4, because there are two arrows from that. 1, 2, I'll give you time to discuss this. 10 minus 4 is 6. There are two here. From this part, 13 minus 6 is 7. 13 minus 6 is 7. 10 minus 4 is 6. What is the value that you have to take here? Since you are calculating backwards, you have to select the lower value. You have to think and understand that. Okay? So we are going with 6 here. Right? We are going with 6 here. Then 6 minus 5 is 1. 10 minus 2 is 8. You have to select the lower value, 1. Here 1 minus 1 is 0. And you have to get 0 here anyway in any activity on arrow, activity on node, whatever the diagram network technique, you have to get 0 here, otherwise there's something wrong in your calculation. Right? So it's the backward pass. In the forward pass, we get the higher value. In the backward pass, we get the lower value because we want to get the maximum distance from the place we start. In the backward pass, we start from the back end. From the end and calculating backwards. From the end and calculating backwards. So I'll give you some time once again to go with this backward pass. I'll divide it to groups again. So you can discuss. Right? You can discuss if you want, or else others. Okay, come on. So I'm going to explain the backward pass because some people are having issues with that. Forward pass is okay. Backward pass, people are having issues. Right. So I'm going with the backward pass. So we are starting with this 20 here because we are calculating from back. From the day that we finish. You can use the chat if you want, if you have an issue. Right? No issues. Then this is the finishing date 20 minus 7 is 30. No issue on that. Same way this 13 plus 7 was 20, 20 minus 7 was 30. So no issue on that. The issue comes in the next step. Right? We'll come from below. Here. You have 13 here. 3. There's only one arrow going outwards of this. So 13 minus 3 is 10. No issue on that. Right? Because there's only one arrow going outwards of this. But in this node 20 or even 20, we call these nodes. Huh? Nodes or events. Here we have two activities going out of that. So there are two paths that we can calculate the latest, sorry, the backward pass. There are two paths, right? Path number 1 and path number 2. Right? Here from this path number 1, we get 30 minus 6 is 7. On the other path, we get 10 minus 4 is 6. Right? You understand that? So you get two values, you get the lower value, 6. Right? I'm purely going on the basis of calculations here. The meaning of this we will discuss later. Right? Okay. Then here also we have two arrows going outside of this. So why take minimum? We will discuss. Two arrows going outwards of this. Two paths. 10 minus 2 is 8. 6 minus 5 is 1. We take the lower value. Why? We will discuss in a while. So 1 minus 1 is 0. Sorry, 0. This is 1 minus 1. Okay. So this is 0. This is 6. So 6, 1, 0. Now there are two issues. Right? Why do we take the higher value when going forward pass? And why do we take lower value when taking backward pass? That is one issue. Yeah, okay. I will explain. Next example is anyway construction related one. I'm going the theoretical stuff here. Right? That's it. Why take higher value going forward pass? Why taking higher value? Let's say in forward path, this was a place where we had two values. This 30. 1 plus 2 was 10. 6 plus 4 was, well, 1 plus 2 is 3. 6 plus 4 is 10. So we take the higher value. Right? Why? Now consider this activity F. Let's say roof construction. Right? This is the starting place of activity F, roof construction. This is the finishing place of roof construction. Here we are given a constraint. Both these activity C and activity D have to finish in order to start this activity F. We have to finish this and finish this. Both. It's like you have to finish the roof structure and maybe walls. Walls and roof structure both to do the roof covering. This becomes walls and then this becomes roof covering. So roof structure. This is roof covering. Example. Huh? We have to finish walls, finish roof structure, both to do the roof covering. Clay tiles or something, asbestos sheets or something. You have to have the structure and you have to have walls both. This 3 comes when the walls finish. Right? Can we lay the roof covering without the roof structure? No, we can't. By the end of 3rd day, remember you are somewhere here. Right? The roof structure is not finished. You can't have the roof structure. The earliest possible day that the roof covering can start is when the roof structure finishes and walls finish. You have to finish walls, finish roof structure, both to start this. What is the day that both those activities finish? It's day number 10. We can't take day number 3 because the roof structure is not done yet. Right? Have you got it? Have you got it? Have you got it? Mama, you can use the chat. Okay. Good. Now it's the same logic from the other side. Right? In calculating backwards, if I try to explain in words, some people might get confused. It's the same logic. Both activities finish in the forward pass is the higher value because it is when both finish. It is the highest distance from the 0, highest value from the 0. Right? If you take the backward pass, it's the same logic. You have to take the higher distance from 20 in terms of durations. So 6 or 7, here from 20 it's 14 days, this is 13 days. You have to select the higher duration from 20. This 14 is 20 minus 6. Huh? 13 is 20 minus 7. 20 is this duration. 7 is the value that we get. Okay. So higher distance from 20 to finish both from backward calculations. You can think and try to understand.